he got his start as a white Black Panther, as a white Jewish Black Panther.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
You obviously know about, like, the SDS kids and the trots that became neocons and shit like that. There were so many people in Trump 1 who got shit canned instantly because there was an article in the Daily Beast about them, like, concocting some weird speedball with, like, Cialis and Kratom and like driving a car into a woman's house, even though they were nominated to be Surgeon General or something.
Are we still playing neoliberalism versus social democracy?
I think we have to nationalize, like, everything.
Welcome to Doomscroll. I'm your host, Joshua Citarella. My guest is Felix Biederman, a co-host of the Chapo Trap House podcast. The most common refrain on every left-wing podcast is, what are we doing wrong? Why is the left losing? We're here today, just past the threshold of a pretty historic election, and I finally get to ask the question, why is the left winning?
The way I always answered that question, why are we losing? It's kind of the same way I would answer the usually similarly paced question, what's wrong with young men? I would always say nothing. They're perfect. But now I've been vindicated.
That's my next question, actually. Yeah. So exit polling seems to indicate that young men, 18 to 29, had a plus 40 margin in favor of Zohran. 2024, we had basically a year of discussion that, like, young men were not savable, that electoral politics was foregone. They swung heavily towards Trump in the previous election. How do we explain the difference in these two outcomes?
I was kind of fascinated by, like, the year-long self-flagellation in liberal quarters about young men specifically. I get, like, it's not just specific to this election, but, like, really for the last 10 years, I would get vicarious humiliation listening to people talk about this. Like, it's, everyone sounds like an asshole when they talk about this. Obviously, the right wing, like, you need to ration your jerking off in this way and, like, do this and either, like, go to a company and sweep the floor to show them that you're a hard worker or, figure out the genetic composition of their board of directors. Like, that's obviously silly, but I would also get just, like, flushes of humiliation when I would read, like, a more, like, laughter liberal person trying to address it in, like, 2017 or 2018, or now for that matter.
Yeah.
Where it's like, listen up, guys. Here's how I went from being insecure to fucking my wife. Do you remember the Good Man Project?
What is a Good Man Project?
Oh, God. There was a lot of, like, stuff like this in 2014. It was sort of a relic of the 2014 internet.
Wow. Okay, that's old school.
But it was huge. I feel bad, like, bringing him up because he's, like, he's like kind of a fucked up guy, but Hugo Schweitzer.
Okay.
It was his thing. And it reminded me so much of that. But this past year of it, since the election, it was so weird to me because it went from this one extreme of, like, young men are, like, fucking lost. They've never been this stupid, which, like, to some extent, maybe, I don't fucking know, to, like, no, young men are the only arbiters of culture, and everything we do, it has to appeal to them.
Yeah.
We have to completely reorientate everything so it appeals specifically to them. And it's so antithetical to really, I think, anyone who's been a 19-year-old man or known them. I mean, it was especially strange after, like, there was a proof of concept for a political movement that just sopped up young men.
Are you thinking specifically of an old man from Vermont, or what's
No, I was actually thinking of the Beto O'Rourke campaign.
Okay.
No, I mean, yeah, like, you could say Bernie, or you could just broadly say, like, vulgar Bernieism.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it makes you insane to remember everything that everyone has ever said online in an attempt to, like, catch them out. But it is sort of funny for us specifically after, like, years of articles about, like, this is so bad because, like, it appeals to young men.
Yep.
Like, now, yeah. But I mean, at the same time, okay, so young men supported Zohran by, like, these gigantic margins. Young people in general in these elections, they swung, like, massively. As usual, young women vote, like, more, uh, generally blue than young men in a lot of instances. But it is before that, it was like, okay, we have to reorient culture and politics and the way that we talk, even in private, to appeal to these guys, because there is like a complete right-wing cultural dominance, and it's going to be like this for 20 years. And so, okay, now is it just over? Like it just ended after a year?
I mean, there's been an enormous amount of media attention on this particular topic. And I think if I recall the numbers, these are rough, but off the top of my head, it's like young men swung 15 points towards the right, young women swung 11, right? And you hear just orders of magnitude more conversation about young men. And what we're talking about is a 4-point differential here. So I wonder if there's something advantageous for the liberal media framing it as being a specifically generational, but also a gendered issue. So it seems to avoid, I think, the elephant in the room, which is like the working class coalition that went towards the right. And what I've tried to push, I think unsuccessfully, is that young people are being proletarianized. We have an eroding middle class. And so their vote is actually just in the same kind of gradation shifting with working people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that should be the most obvious thing in the world to people, that, like, you only have so many years where you can go, okay, imagine when you do have a stake in this. Imagine when you do have a family. Imagine when you do own property. How many years
Yeah,
can go by where they're not, that doesn't happen for them?
Yeah. I am trying to imagine that, not successfully. But on the topic of analytics, I found myself thinking yesterday that statistically, right, we're talking about this swing from 2024 to 2025, there must have been not an insignificant number of people who voted for Trump and then a year later voted for Zohran.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
How do we fucking explain that?
I think probably the same way that you explain the multiple J. Jones Trump districts in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everyone who has won a presidential election since 2016, they have said to themselves, the fact that we won at all is a vindication of doing things the exact way we want to do them 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And this shit like cost of living election, none of that matters. They like us personally, and warts and all. And for, Trump won, that meant, like, after like repeated failures with their legislative agenda, that, like, they thought they could coast with, the administration not really being about anything after about Charlottesville. They thought they could have 3 years of just, we're out of agenda. We got slaughtered in the midterms, but there's enough, like, leaks and recrimination and backbiting that, yeah, people will find this fun enough to vote for it again.
Sure.
For Brandon, obviously that manifested in its own way. People love this measured deal making where I'm never really capable of making a deal. They love this, like, zombie Scoop Jackson foreign policy consensus.
Yeah.
The polls, I mean, everyone thinks the polls are cocked. But now Trump 2, I mean, obviously Trump 2 is like a different beast than Trump 1.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, it's quite different.
It's quite different, but it's also, like, very Brandon. It's horrible. It's, horrible. There are horrific policy decisions every day that I think are, unambiguously worse than Trump 1.
Yeah.
But the sort of posture and rhythm of the White House, especially the longer it goes on, it is very branded.
Yeah, yeah.
They have more of a reason to go, okay, this is a vindication of us. Because, technically they are like the first Republicans to win the popular vote in,
Yeah, yeah.
however many years, I think 20 years. But, I mean, cost of living election against the ill-prepared and not incredibly well-liked, very put upon VP for like the senile pants-shitting president who the deep state and the media expended the last of their powers protecting until they couldn't anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no like awareness that, okay, in 2021, Trump was on his hands and knees begging to be allowed to have Facebook again. And at his lowest point, they thought they could excise him from the party. And then, price, like inflation, problems with price index everywhere,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
multiple failures in foreign policy, and
Yep.
just the reality of a chief executive who could not communicate his ideas. I guess they just think that stuff is like of no importance
Hmm.
to their electoral fortunes.
Hmm.
That like he got out of that rut just like through his own wits by doing the same stuff he always does.
Right, right.
I mean, now, like, they're doing the same thing that Biden did, where they're going, actually, the economy is really good, but it's not helping that people won't talk about it.
Yeah, right, right. Well, some portion of this enormous swing towards Trump in 2024 is, I think there's like a general few points correction for every incumbent across the world just based on inflation and dissatisfaction. So his enormous win is maybe proportionally a little bit smaller. And people are saying a similar thing about Zohran now. What portion of this groundswell, enormous showing of support for Zohran do you think is a backlash or a vote of dissatisfaction with the current Trump administration?
It's difficult to say. I mean, you almost wish that Cuomo could drop out of the general just so you could get a
Mm-hmm.
better.
Yeah.
And as much as we like him, then Curtis Lewa was replaced with like a more representative
Sure.
Republican.
Yeah.
So we could get a better appraisal of that. I think it would be fair to read into it that way. I do certainly think that like there is a broad anger amongst the Democratic base at
Yeah.
not even the failures of the Democratic Party, but like just the complete lack of effort
Hmm.
from the moment the election was called.
Yeah.
And
That's explicitly their strategy too, right? To the James Carville do nothing.
yeah, I mean, I get it to some extent, but also like people can hear you. You know, it reminds me of what they do the same fucking thing where they go, we're gonna appeal to like all the fucking idiots in America by saying you could buy a big truck because of our policies. And it's like they
Mm.
can hear you calling them idiots.
Yeah, yeah.
They may be idiots, but like they know they're being called that. They know they're saying, hey, this appeals to these dum-dums.
So we're talking about backlash to this Trump administration. There is, however, Zohran as the individual who has unique appeal in his message, in his media outreach. What do you think about him specifically that is resonating with voters as compared to other comparable candidates in the past?
Um,
He seems to be, I mean, more appealing than like an AOC
oh,
for right now. His
absolutely.
approval ratings are higher. He's more popular with people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, not to take anything away from AOC's victory in 2018, but like that was her very enthused base going against like a very non-enthused base that didn't show up at all for Crowley.
Yeah, yeah.
It would, I don't, there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of low turnout to get in there. And, that's well within the rules. But this was just like a groundswell,
Yeah.
compared to that.
There's a lot
Both,
more people.
yeah. But no, he has a lot going for him. He is probably like the single best communicator, in American left of center politics.
Oh, he
I,
crushed in those debates.
yeah,
That was, yeah.
It was a pretty much perfectly run campaign. Their communication style is great. I think there's a bunch of marginal things that really help him out in addition to that, though. Obviously, he's charismatic. Obviously, he's a great communicator. But he also never condescends to people, and I think that's a huge thing.
Hmm.
There are, like, goofy, like, memes and shit around the campaign, but he's never, like, doing this, like, "Hey, I'm in on the joke, guys," thing. He's still talking about his 5 main issues all the time. He keeps
Yeah,
hitting on
yeah.
those, and he never, like he always gives whoever is listening a chance to rise to the occasion.
Hmm.
I don't think that, like, if you take, like, a representative, sample size of voters anywhere, that all of them are gonna understand, like, 100% of the things you say off the bat if you don't, adulterate it a little bit, but they can also tell when they're being condescended to. I think that paid off in the primary. That paid off mainly with, like, the globalized Antifa controversy. He very easily could have done, like, the Reverend Wright playbook and, like, thrown someone under the bus or, like, "Okay, I was 2 years younger," you know?
Mhm.
But, he did just, like, kind of ask his voters and his potential voters to trust him, let him explain it, and it did pay off. I do think that, with a few things around, like, Israel stuff specifically,
Yeah.
um, since the general, he has erred on the side of caution more so than he did during the primary. He still, like, stood on his words and, gave an affirmative defense of something in a way that, like, no elected in American politics, that I can think of recently
Yeah.
has done besides, like, Rashida Tlaib.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the on the topic of Israel, one of the theories, and I think this is rather compelling, is that uh, in the early side of his campaign, a lot of the establishment attacks onto him specifically focused on Israel, and they fell flat because it's a really unpopular topic.
Yeah,
And so it had this effect of like actually backfiring against these establishment critiques when he would like step out in front of people and be like, I'm not going to visit Israel. I'm going to stay here in New York City, for example.
that was incredibly smart. That was one of the, like, if there's any, like, obviously it's a combination of things, but if you could say, like, any single sentence or phrase, like, won him the primary, it might as well be that.
Mm,
That
yeah.
was fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
I do think that, like, there was just, like, an arrogance, not just from Cuomo and, this sort of, like, disorganized and then organized too hastily anti-Zohran forces. There was an arrogance, but also just, like, again, a lack of awareness. They thought, maybe more so hoped, that, like, this is an aberration. Things will return to mean. It will be 2003 again, where,
Yeah.
like, this will go back to being a third rail. We'll re-electrify it. We just have to paint this guy as incredibly scary. But something that I think is incredibly interesting is I saw someone, like, they did an exit poll, and someone I follow, like, quote tweeted it because the person quoted in the exit poll said, like, "Hey, I love both these guys. I love Cuomo and Zohran."
Yeah.
And it's funny,
Okay.
but there's more people like that
Huh.
than
Okay.
people who are, like, negatively polarized against Zohran.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the fact that, Cuomo thought he could run, like, a smear campaign, it took this. I don't know. I think his candidacy was kind of doomed no matter what because it was just so arrogant and just he did everything short of just saying, like, "Okay, shitheads, like, give me this job so I can run for president when I'm
Right.
85."
Right.
But it you know, the voters, for however much they've moved on Israel and a lot of things, and however dissatisfied they are with, party leadership, they still thought, well, okay, this Zohran guy is a Democrat. Like, why the fuck are you, like, why are you
Yeah,
saying he did
yeah,
9/11?
right. No, I mean, that's a good point. He was on the Democratic ticket. On this topic of the establishment critiques against Zohran, some of the things that were maybe more effective that he had to spend a lot of time talking to the media about and apologizing in many cases was previous comments about defund the police.
Mhm.
What do you think was some of the major points of friction in winning people over? Some of the more like, let's say, less popular activist demands from a few years ago.
Well, I will say this. It kind of helped him that, like, half of, like, prominent Democrats did that for 2 months and then, like, never talk about it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
They didn't kneel in the kente cloth shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I mean, my favorite campaign in history is Kamala's, aborted primary campaign in, I mean, it didn't even really make it to 2020, her
Oh
2019
yeah.
campaign,
No,
but
no, it literally didn't make it to 2020. Yeah.
yeah, her and Beto were fascinating to me. Beto was trying to do this, like, maximalist social liberalism thing where
Hmm.
he's just there's not really any concept of anything about healthcare or you know, anything to do with, like, prices, any late, nothing, no mention of card check, but he's going out there and going, "Okay, we're gonna take all the guns and, like, fucking take tax breaks away from churches," which, like, okay, but you're running in Texas after this, right?
Right, right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and Kamala, it was she was one of the many candidates that, like, latched on to Medicare for all. People forget Pete Buttigieg did that. A lot of fucking people did
Yeah.
that.
They all had their own branded version of it.
Yeah, but she seized on, like, the left liberal lane. I think she had a lot of staffers, and Warren had this problem too, that were, Twitter power users,
Hmm.
and that's why, my favorite moment from her campaign, one of the only debates she was at was when she asked everyone on stage, "Will you join my pledge in asking for, like, social media companies to ban Trump?" And even Warren was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Wow. Okay.
She tried to sell shirts that had the words "dude has to go" because that was, like, how she
Really?
branded the policy. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, like, if only, like, DSA endorsed candidates in 2020 were, like, doing stuff like that, it'd be one thing, but it really, like, everyone kind of made an asshole out of themselves.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it really is hard to under exaggerate just the degree to which, like, this kind of militant activist rhetoric was predominant everywhere. People are maybe half jokingly saying that woke is back. Is it?
I mean, I don't really think it went away. It certainly, like, does not have anywhere near the cultural power that it did at one point. I mean, I do think that was a kind of a traumatic thing for a lot of liberals in the wake of the election and
Mm,
inauguration. This idea that articles could no longer, affect real world events,
right,
which,
right.
after Trump won, that would be a horrifying thing to face if that's what you're
Hmm.
expecting, because there were so many people in Trump 1 who got shit canned instantly because there was an article in the Daily Beast about them,
Yep,
like,
yep.
concocting some weird speedball with, like, Cialis and kratom and, like, driving a car into a woman's house even though they were nominated to be Surgeon General or something.
Yeah.
And they would always apologize for shit. They were very, like, they were obviously, like, out there and, like, love triggering people, but they also there was this weird element of going, "And by the way, actually, we're not racist at all," which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so weird to think about now.
Hmm.
But, even if articles do not have anywhere near the same power and, this Trump one style of, like, streaming service friendly wokeness is,
Hmm. Hmm.
not in vogue anymore, there's still, a shitload of people still went to the women's marches. A shitload of people still voted for, like, all types of fucking shitty midterm candidates in 2018. All that money that went to what was her name? Amy McGrath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What did you get? Something like 300 million, something insane
Mm-hmm.
to run against Mitch McConnell and lose by like 18 points. The people who gave her money, they're still out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't just die. I do think that like maybe when all this is said and done, that maybe some of this will have been kind of positive for a lot of otherwise, party loyalist liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
Um, I think the experience of seeing like no article can get you in trouble if you're Trump or Trump's people, and when they think you're upset, they're just going to keep like rubbing it in, and like nothing is bad enough to give anyone pause. I think it did make enough of them go, well, okay, what the fuck? Okay, we love Jay Jones.
I mean, I've tried to approach this on the podcast previously, maybe unsuccessfully, but I think there's a kind of reckoning on the left liberal side right now that like there was I think, faulty assumption that political power was invested in society's storytellers, that like if you could reprimand someone through articles and press or on Rachel Maddow, for example, like eventually that this was like the lever that led to political change. And it's seemingly like now, I mean, it's quite obvious. And to anyone on the left, it has always been obvious. But like that lever is not attached to shit. Like it's not attached to actual political power. And so there is power in the franchise. There's power in the workplace. But like saying stuff doesn't shape the material world. And I guess part of the election of Zohran is like it is kind of relocating politics in material conflict or the contestation for material resources.
I do think though, like, and I've been incredibly interested in the trajectory of specifically like left liberals,
Yeah.
people who like they voted every midterm.
Yep.
Their trajectory since Biden's inauguration. I think you're right that like yeah, the reemergence and reelection of Trump wasn't as a huge affecting thing for them, but I think of underrated importance. Israeli snipers, like, shooting toddlers in 2021.
Hmm.
I don't really think there's like any real value in prognostications most of the time with politics because, you don't really get anything for being right. Uh, but I do remember during like the first iteration of like the resistance, and the trial period of Hillary's 2016 campaign. And obviously we all had like ideological and stylistic reasons for why we found it grating and like offensive. I mean, Hillary's 2008 campaign, the fact that she came out and did like that Instagram infographic bullshit in 2016 after that was one of the most cynical things I've ever fucking seen in my life. But there was a real demand for like that type of Democratic Party friendly id poll that otherwise would be like, in just 5 years prior would have been considered like just totally unsaleable to the general public. But I always thought at that time, like, there's such a huge contradiction here with foreign policy in general with the Democratic Party, but especially with Israel, because it like, you just have to play like one thing that like Ovadia Youssef has ever said. You just have to, take one fucking statement from like, whoever the deputy mayor of Lod is, and it's the most racist thing you've ever heard. I certainly wasn't optimistic about it being such a contradiction that it would cause a fracture, and it would make people who I think were totally earnest in their beliefs, a lot of them, actually go, okay, fuck this. All these people I thought I liked, they were wrong about this. They lied to me.
Yep.
But that did happen in a lot of places. A lot of a lot of people that, you know, had previously had some ignominy for being resistance figures
Yeah.
online. They've really made a sea change, and they've kind of acted. They've shown a lot of backbone and principle. And to that end, I do think that 2021 was hugely important because, I'm sure all these people knew that, like, Israel does horrible things. The American military does horrible things. America has this huge moral stain on us, not just through our own actions, but through the very, very specific things that Israel does that we specifically make happen and make possible.
Yeah.
But they had never seen firsthand footage quite like that. And it was
Sure.
also the most contemporary, like, a lot of people, like, they got put on Canary Mission,
Yep.
students, doctors, all types of people. They just got, like, professionally blackballed, careers ruined, lives destroyed. And I don't think that, like, otherwise uninitiated people had seen that happen right in front of them
Yeah.
before.
Should we maybe define what Canary Mission is if people are not
Oh, that's a
familiar?
good idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Canary Mission, it is a project of the Israeli lobby, and it's essentially a blacklist.
Right.
It's a blacklist of, usually students, usually pretty young students.
Like college freshmen in some cases.
Yeah, I know at one point there had been high schoolers on there,
Wow.
but yeah, college freshmen, like 18, 19-year-olds, but also, like, just people with normal jobs. And Canary Mission, which is run by Adam Milstein, not run by, but, like, he's a sort of a Israeli lobby super donor, and this is one of his pet projects. Um, it will put their name, where they live, their occupation, where you can call their boss or their, administrators at their school. And it, even way before, Elon Twitter, I would try to get people to, like, report it because it is a doxing account. Like, doxing is against the rules.
It's literally that. Yeah.
Yeah, it would never fucking go away.
Yeah.
It would like,
That's the goal, right? Is to basically make it impossible to hire these people by flooding the internet with like talking shit about any activist, like a
yeah.
student activist.
I think that for a lot of left libs, they conceptually knew that, maybe they had some vague recollection of what happened to Norm Finkelstein or something.
Yeah.
But they had never seen it play out in front of them like that.
Yeah, in real time.
Yeah. And I mean, also just like the very bold lying about Shireen Abu Akleh in the same year, it it set the stage for what I think is one of the most surprising events in my lifetime in this country, which is the American response, the American public's response,
Right.
to all of this.
Crystal Ball said something that's stuck with me. I think this was a few months ago now, but she said that Americans are maybe not necessarily voting specifically on the topic of Israel, but the stance a candidate takes on Israel is indicative of where their allegiances lie on every other issue. And so counter-signaling or any anti-establishment candidate that counter-signals Israel's war on Gaza, those people just win popular support by like miles and miles.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, like, you don't have to be incredibly well read or have some super sophisticated view of the world to be aware of the basic fact that everything that Israel does, um, everyone with a vested interest in that, who either occupies a position of power in America or will, it's useful for them to know what is the worst thing we can do to someone. But I do also think that's right. Like, it's kind of like the Iraq War in the 2008 Democratic primary, though hopefully it plays out better.
To watch part 2 of this episode, you can support the show on Patreon. We both live in NYC. There's been a lot of talk about the difficulty of Zohran advancing certain planks, certain parts of his policy program. What do you think about these criticisms and obstacles like the billionaire tax and capital flight? Like, people speculate that all the rich people are going to leave New York.
I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. Capital flight doesn't really happen in large American cities like that. At least for that reason, or at least it would not happen here.
New York specifically is
Yeah,
insulated.
I mean, I could be totally wrong. I could end up like eating my words on this, but you have to figure that they would have already done that. They would have already done that under like De Blasio.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they're eating like 50% taxes to live in
yeah.
New York. So,
I mean, I always think about just going back to Israel for a second, the most fervent, psychotic, punitive, like pro-Israel people in America, they don't even move to Israel. So
right.
the most anti-Zohran people, they're not gonna like go through the trouble of getting a new driver's license.
It's a big cost to uproot yourself. And like, I'm inclined to agree with you, actually. And I think we're talking about a 2% tax to fund like the free bus fare.
Yeah.
Like, that's not enough for someone to like move their whole life and their bank accounts and all this shit, right?
It maybe if you're like one of these hyper leveraged billionaires, maybe, but if you are one of those guys, I think you have bigger problems ahead than like a 2% marginal raise on your taxes.
Right.
As far as everything else, I mean, Bill fucking de Blasio did accomplish his like central goal of his administration.
Yep.
At the end of the day. And he still retained the support of his base.
Yeah.
So,
what about this supposed Trump retaliation that he's going to withhold funds? He's going to send the National Guard, all sorts of things.
I think any of those are certainly possible, but he would do that like no matter what, right? Like there's nothing short of like having like an insane deal like Eric Adams did, like short of like getting caught on tape doing something, like being like a transactional and amoral enough person to do that. That's a risky run no matter what. I mean, if it comes down to it, I do think that he's aware that like when the bottom is already falling out a little bit with the American economy,
yeah,
one of the worst choices you can make is to just like completely occupy and like perforate like a city that constitutes 10% of the GDP.
Not a bad idea. Yeah.
The fiscal capital
of the country,
Anglo-American world.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of New York, we had Ezra Klein on the show a few months back. He put out this book with Derek Thompson called Abundance. This certainly upsets very vocally a lot of people on the left. Zohran, however, is a supporter of many of these policies. What are your own thoughts on abundance?
I mean, I've not read the book. I know some of the broad strokes. The abundance stuff that's like, okay, we're going to have like orbital drop ships or whatever. We're going to have like ODST from Halo.
Right.
And we're going to drop like pharmaceuticals that are made in suborbital laboratories into neighborhoods with drones and all this like crazy shit. It reminds me of the Trump guys who were like, you hate all these, mean tweets and shit, but like, we want nuclear fusion powered space flight and all this shit. And this is how we get it. And the guy saying that is always like someone who runs like an Ethereum exchange. And how do you get to, how do you achieve like nuclear aerial propulsion, something that no one in history has achieved outside of like the Voyager program from like a Bitcoin exchange. For abundance, it's the same thing of like, how do we get from, on-demand automated pharmaceutical space grids? How do we get there from like zoning? I guess that makes more sense getting there from zoning. But I don't know. I'm sure they're earnest in their belief, but it feels like a self-conscious attempt to just look busy.
Hmm. I think the kind of emulating, let's say, the style of a lot of these like right-wing, like super futuristic accounts. I think that they are trying to invoke some of that aesthetic. For people who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, there's like little kind of future scenario sketch that's the opening chapter to the book, and it is really feeling like kind of it's trying to compete with the Elon Musk super futuristic vision of
Yeah.
the future. Yeah. Okay.
Did you ever see that? Sorry, I forget like which. It was one of the big like crypto exchanges, like Binance or something like that. But it was an ad where like a based guy is going to a therapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Solana. It was yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it was for Solana.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Solana is like the most bullshit thing. Like,
He's like,
that is
I
nothing.
want to build, right?
Yeah, he's like, I want to build. I want to do space colonization.
Yeah. And they're saying you're having problematic, not DEI
Yeah.
thoughts right now.
Something that really made me laugh is someone like looked back on Solana's account back to like the summer of 2020, and of course, they were like, Solana recognizes the contributions of POC.
No, really?
Yeah, no, it's
Beautiful.
yeah,
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
they just fucking cuck to whatever is in power in the moment. That is beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah,
the irony of that whole fucking, sorry, this is my own axe to grind, but like Solana, all of this crypto shit is stateless capital, and then at the end of the little commercial they put together is like the Solana name with like the American flag and stars and stripes. It's like your entire project is to undermine the existence of states. Like,
yeah.
they're just signaling to whoever. So it's, yeah, POC in 2020, it's national conservatism in 2024. Beautiful.
The only big cap cryptocurrency out there that I think has a right to put an American flag next to its name is Bitcoin, because it was probably created by an American intelligence agency.
On this topic of being poor and living in New York, you moved here in 2017, I think, right?
I moved here in 2015.
2015. Okay. How, so you've been here over the course of like, let's say 10 years.
Yeah.
How have you personally seen the cost of living increase over that time?
Pretty dramatically, even though I do think that like, I am quite insulated from it. I've more so seen like I don't have like a comprehensive picture of across the board price increases in everything. I get the sense, and I have anecdotal evidence for things being astronomically cheaper when I first moved here. When me, Amber Frost, and Nick Mullen, when we all lived together for like the first year of the show's existence, and before that, all of us paid like $600 to live there,
Wow.
and it wasn't like an amazing place, but it wasn't a like dump or anything. And I really don't know if there are places like that anymore for like
Right.
younger people who are moving here. I get the sense that it is like way more prohibitively expensive, and there's just far fewer means of social mobility, especially.
Yeah, this is something I've talked about with Amber in the past, but like the ideal conditions for making creative work is when the cost of living is low and the wages are high. And so you can ideally work part-time and then have a few decommodified days in the calendar week, and you can like do your weird art practice or your creative writing or something like that.
Yeah.
And the cost of living rising over the last, like, let's say decade has basically just squeezed that out to like, maybe we are even examples of this, oddly enough, is that the only kind of overhead and manageable creative practice is like people can work with immediately what they have around, which is just talking into a laptop in most
Yeah.
cases.
I mean, like, there was like a cutoff point where you noticed that like
Yeah.
people stopped coming here to like, for most of us, like content creation was like not the first thing we thought of.
Yep.
But like there were people who came here to do like all the sorts of like interesting things all the time up until I would say about like 2020. And there were fewer and fewer people every year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I in 2015 and like 2016, when we were in that apartment and yeah, our rent was like $600 each or something.
Amazing.
Yeah, like before the show, I would like do like odd jobs, like walk people's dogs and shit like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or like, like move boxes around or whatever. And then like do like freelance stuff. And I would not necessarily like want to live the rest of my life making $1,200 a year.
Sure.
But
Sure.
like
Yeah.
when you're like 24, 25, like it was like pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still got to do a lot of shit. You got to go a lot of places. You were still able to like meet all types of different people and engage in culture and pick things up. And I imagine there was a lot less means of social mobility in 2015 and 16 compared to like when magazines would pay you $2 a word.
Oh yeah, big time. Big time. Yeah.
But at the same time there was like you could like make a living through media.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and
Oh, you could make a middle class living through media. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is that is one of the sad things. On the show, like our show, we like to make fun of articles and all that, but like, first of all, we owe our entire business to articles. Second off, um, it was more fun to live here when like there were tons of people writing articles all the time and like making a living from
Sure.
articles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never really thought about it this way at the time, but I kind of showed up for the last 2 years that there was any money in articles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not that they were profitable, they were not. But like that investment capital there was enough like cultural sheen and prestige
Yeah.
that they would accept these things as a loss leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even the very degenerated comparatively poor paying media that I was a part of compared to that of the one 20, 30 years before. I saw there were some like really like idiotic deals that I really got the better of just by virtue of like, Apple would invest $2 billion in Genius and,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
some billionaire somewhere thinks that there's something cool about owning a newspaper. I worked at a really weird place briefly before Chapo that was nothing against the people that work there and the guy that founded it, but it was like, so it was the guy who founded diapers.com and he wanted to make
Okay.
like a multimedia news site that was like a combination of fucking like John Oliver and like The
Okay.
Intercept.
Okay.
It was so like tonally weird.
All right. All right. Who's the host for it?
Oh, I mean, there were a ton of different people working on
Okay.
it
All
who
right.
like have all gone on to like do different shit. But the point being like there was still like people making really poor financial choices like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just completely out of their desire for like cultural prestige.
Right. Right.
There are still, billionaire media pet projects now, but it's always like someone has a very specific like local politics axe to grind.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something about like there's been a development, I think, in the American ruling class where, like, previously, if you were like a wealthy robber baron, like you would have to give back in the form of like Carnegie libraries, right? There's like all of these things, like I went to the Frick collection a few months back. If people aren't familiar, this is in New York City. It's this palatial home on the Upper East Side, if I recall correctly, and it's got basically the best art collection that you've ever seen in your whole life. It's like this is where you go to see the Rembrandt self-portrait, right? It's like all of the really like important, incredible works that you learn about in like high school and college. Henry Clay Frick is a steel industrialist who is famous for being incredibly brutal and having people who tried to organize in his shops murdered, right? It's like the most high contrast example of like cruelty, but then giving back, in that the mission statement for the Frick collection is that it's like open to the public in perpetuity and accessible and affordable and all of these things. So there was some sense in previous iterations of the American ruling class that they owed a small debt to society. And now I feel like the American ruling class, like Bezos and Musk, for example, they're like, oh, we owe nothing. Actually, we're going to escape and leave all of you to rot on a planet that is heating up rapidly. Like, there's been some kind of transformation in this 21st century robber baron class, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, I mean, I think there's a ton of different reasons for it. There's always been cultural stratification and cultural goods that,
Mm-hmm.
like, their audiences were more economically stratified,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
typically people below like a certain wealth level wouldn't touch it. But by and large, we shared the same culture, everyone,
Mm.
you
Yep.
know, and at least a guy like Carnegie had like a vested interest in the upkeep of the culture. In even if he didn't care about certain forms of art, that like the conditions would be such that like people could study it, people could make advancements in it. Same thing with architecture, same thing with like, you know, any billion other pursuits. Even a rapacious guy like Frick or like Jay Gould, one of these late 19th century financiers who,
Mm.
cornered the yarn market in 1897 and caused like 70,000 deaths, like one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Jay Gould is my favorite one of those guys. But they even like the worst asshole you can imagine from that period, they still did something like, they built a library because there was still
Yeah.
like, for them, they did probably, it probably wasn't like entirely altruistic, but they did probably think like, okay, well, we're kind of in this together for better or for worse, probably for worse for me if I'm Jay Gould. But
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that, I would like more of these people to be literate.
Mm.
I'd like more people to be able to appreciate what, Wagner.
Or at least if I give them Wagner, they don't come to my mansion with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah.
Like there was always that threat.
I wonder, I think that's a huge thing too. That's definitely, I mean, around that time, there were so many assassinations in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
That was a huge part of it, I'm sure. But I wonder if it might, like, financialization might be a little bit of the problem too.
Hmm. Hmm. That it's less clear where the wealth is being extracted to, you mean?
I more mean in the sense that like the individual billionaire or whatever family, whatever the locus of like these immense concentrations of wealth, that um no, you can't give an exact pinpoint on like the start of like hyper financialization, but generally we'll say like the late 70s.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, like
Early neoliberalism. Yeah.
yeah, I like to say, I always like to put it like right after Volcker raises the rates
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
under
Volcker
Carter.
shock.
Yeah, but after that, even before, yeah, because even before that, super rich guys would still, you know, do things like this, like either appeal to the public or just do something out of their own cultural ambitions. But financialization, it made these guys less human.
Hmm.
It made them more like single person NGOs or
Huh.
private military contractors or like, I guess kind of nation states onto people in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And it also, this is kind of maybe sort of a reductive answer, but I do think that whether you're fucking Jeff Bezos or John Arnold or, some brilliant guy that did some amazing currency trade with George Soros 40 years ago, and you're still living on the $7 billion he made that day, you still have the same brain as like a cocaine addled kick streamer who has millions of dollars but keeps playing like Bitcoin slots,
Yeah,
and your
yeah.
brain still lights up when you see the number go up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think about Stephen Paddock, who blew out all his synopses playing video poker and going on sex tours and doing whatever the fuck he did. The less like directly personally violent but similar version of that would be someone who has like $40 billion from doing whatever thing that like makes the world just a little bit shittier every day. It's probably a little thrilling for them to look at and who knows how the money breaks down. I'm sure that there's no one out there who has like they literally have $40 billion in a checking account. But it is like, everything is set up for them to just for their money to kind of grow exponentially over the course of their lifetimes.
Live
And
off returns, yeah.
yeah, and maybe a lot of them are just really into that.
On this topic of neoliberalism, Zohran is kind of, in my view, like an old school social democrat, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's bringing us back to the way that politics was organized previous to this like crisis in the 1970s, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very much in favor of those things. We are, however, at this weird transitional period where like Trump has done away with the old global neoliberal model. We're no longer in the Bretton Woods paradigm. And I had kind of been thinking over the last year that like, are we still playing neoliberalism versus social democracy, right? Like a lot of the politics on the left in the last few years has been kind of, can we turn the dial from privatization back towards like having more universal public services? And I guess this is a kind of heartening example that politics is obviously popular, but not just popular, it is possible. What are your thoughts on this paradigm? Like, are we still carrying forward the flag of social democracy under whatever this new Trump world order is that's emerging?
I think that's an accurate appraisal. The question though of whether, whether you would call like whatever the program politics that like, Carney in Canada and like Macron and Hakeem Jeffries for that matter,
Sure.
if you would still call that neoliberalism. I mean, I would say for like probably most of those guys, yeah. And the only reason I'm iffy on Jeffries is I don't think he's verbalized his opinion on like anything in about 3 years.
They're going to primary him, right?
They have to.
Yeah.
Like, I have never seen someone who is so dead set on doing a job that they do not have to do and clearly are just horribly uncomfortable in. But I am not the greatest in the world at like categorizing these things. I would actually say that like whatever you would call like this constituency in America for social democracy, I would like to see nationalization, like just full-bore nationalization become more of a topic.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't like,
Now we're
I
talking.
don't think it's a crazy thing that freaks people out. Corbyn in 2017 talked about nationalization a lot. I know that conventional knowledge is now that like, even if Corbyn is a very sweet man, he's kind of a fucking lunkhead as a politician. But he did do very well. He did very well in 2017. And obviously the UK is a different country with a different political culture and a different history behind these things.
And nationalization too. They're a little more used to that in some cases. Yeah.
But I mean, no time like the present to get moving though, right?
I couldn't agree more. On this topic of American social democracy, the primary plank of this movement was Medicare for all. There's a whole bunch of political, also economic reasons why that is. Recently, there is a crisis around healthcare that is apparently shredding the Republican Party. One, Marjorie Taylor Greene has broken with Trump on this question of healthcare. What do you make about her views about the Affordable Care Act and these soon to disappear subsidies?
The thing that gives me pause on all of this is watch any media property that you like that has been running for the past 30 years. Most things that are still in circulation, still being made today, they're around that old because no one makes anything new anymore. I think Nashville is like the last new
Right.
cultural product out of America.
Yeah.
But if you know, watch an episode of Law and Order from like 1999, you know, any show like that, CSI, fucking whatever. In every like 6 or 7 years in those shows, there'll be like an issue episode about HMOs or health insurance. Or
Yeah.
if it's in the late 90s, it's HMOs
Mhm.
specifically. Then if it's during the second Bush administration, it's about health insurance specifically. There's always like been a cultural presence for this idea that we, you know, should have Medicare for all in America, no matter what it was called at the time. But it's just, I have yet to see any evidence that we have anything besides like a cultural release valve for that.
Hmm.
Because it's just always this thing that like every few years we all agree that it fucking sucks. We hate it. And then it gets more expensive and
Right,
works for
right.
fewer people. And then nothing. I mean, obviously I think it would be great if we had Medicare for all. I think it would take the boot off the neck of a lot of people. It would improve millions of lives. It would save countless lives. But you can make the case for that being maybe the best of all possible solutions in America in 1999.
Hmm.
I think we have to nationalize like everything and not just doing like an American NHS, but kind of nationalizing everything along every step of the way. I mean, the unbridled profiteering and gouging and criminality in the American healthcare sector, there aren't a lot of industries like that in the
Right.
world.
Right.
It's really, I mean, I don't think anyone could argue that it's operating at peak efficiency. And the rot just goes so deep that I think, I do think that you have to kind of divorce everything from profit
Hmm.
for a while, probably forever.
Hmm.
Um, and I do, obviously, Medicare for all on a 10-year run, it's cheaper than what we do now, right? That's the thing that everyone
That's the
said.
great irony of this whole fucking situation is
Right.
that it's cost saving. It's not too expensive.
It's cost saving, but I do also think that there is a great danger of if there was Medicare for all, that like there would be collusion in like the remaining profiteers in the
Hmm.
American healthcare trade
Right.
of gouging the life out of it.
Sure.
And
Sure.
obviously, like just having like a nationalized system like the NHS, that is not a silver bullet either because they're,
Hmm.
you know, the forces are trying to do that too over there. But just put side by side, obviously the NHS has had its fair share of issues in the last decade or so. I still think it's preferable to Canada's system, and I think even preferable to that would be like, yeah, no, we're no one, we're not allowing any private companies to operate in this field anymore. I mean, the first time that someone devised a system where you get booted off of coverage based on how much you are algorithmically determined to be a doormat, to be
Hmm.
someone who won't contest it. Like the first time that happened, it should have been like, oh, okay, all right, no more. You cannot even sell like tubes for interferon at a
Right.
profit.
Right.
But I don't know how much currency my line of thinking has though.
Yeah.
Honestly, when we were talking about like people who made the shift, obviously, like there's like, you know, 3 or 4 names that are like the most prominent examples.
Yep.
the entire time I was thinking about like a specific guy who isn't famous at all, who
Okay.
just like I think is really annoying. Like,
Oh, yeah.
just like, a guy who is like my least favorite friend for 2 years.
Okay. Just one specific dude who sucks.
Yeah, those are usually like my axes to grind. I don't out of like all the I get a little embarrassed calling them like enemies because
Mm,
you are talking about like both you and them are just like staring at your screen completely emotionless, like typing paragraphs and paragraphs about each other over the years. But out of all the people, other media figures we've been in
mm,
opposition to, there's only a couple that I think like like I really like authentically like really fucking like hate, really just anger me at a deep level. Um, I really do think that like for the most part, for 99% of instances, the longer you observe someone and read them or listen to them or whatever, the more interested in them as a person you become. I
mm,
think it's
mm.
kind of inevitable for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, we've been on a little bit of an arc in the last few months of kind of like just mapping the spectrum of internet politics. And it has been really, I try not to talk about any previous guests on the show, but it has been really, I think, enlightening to sit down with these people who, in my mind, they're invested with this tremendous discursive power because they have an enormous platform. But in many cases, they're just like, a person who has a hobby and likes to like rile people up, but they're not like a philosopher or ideologue.
Yeah.
It's kind of like hanging out with an artist, and then it's like, oh, but then millions of people are exposed to what this person does, and they have enormous influence in like real politics. It's very, very surreal. But to transition a little bit into your personal background and your early story of how you were politicized, you have talked a bit on the show. I believe you studied history and politics, specializing in the Middle East. So you come from a kind of serious intellectual background of looking at these questions. You're not just a casual poet or a shit poster who got into politics. How did you choose to study that material? That's a little bit of an unusual choice.
I don't I I'm really just like an enthusiastic hobbyist.
Mm.
I took one good shot at trying to learn Arabic and it was just I did not get very far. So
Okay.
like I don't I really I mean there are people who I consider like incredibly knowledgeable experts who don't speak the language,
Mm.
but I'm not one of them.
Well, you know a lot more than I do, so that's
I
enough
just
for me.
I just had like I don't know. I was one of those kids, and I guess I still am kind of like this, where like every 2 years or 18 months, there would just be like a topic that would really like I didn't want to read about anything else. I only
Mm.
wanted to know about that. At one point in my childhood, it was Napoleon, and then that led me to read about the Battle of Acre,
Okay.
and then that led to the Ottomans. But for a lot of people, there are a few interests like that come and go and they wax and wane, but a few of them will stay with you for life. And for me, I don't know. I just maybe it was like growing up. I was in middle school when 9/11 happened, was planned, whatever people want to say. Um, and I mean, obviously, every kid is different, but I think around, like, age 10, 11, that is, like that's kind of when, like, the outwardly apparent foundations of your personality
Mm.
really start to
Sure.
crystallize,
Sure.
and maybe just the fact that, like, it just happenstantially around then that I already had some background of interest in some of these things, and, um, it dovetailed with stuff I was hearing about, but also, like no, just the people in my family were also incredibly well read, much better read than I was and am. Uh, incredibly smart and opinionated and really funny. I think most importantly, and they all had like their own. opinions that ranged from like, sort of 90s sock dem left lib to like just weird half joking shit that my dad would talk about.
Yeah, half joking.
Like he said, he had this long running joke about John McCain being a Manchurian candidate, but he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, but we kind of have it coming.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think I think that had a that
Give him
had
the old Hassan Piker.
no, I think that had as big an effect as big of an effect as anything did though, because all kids do this thing, right? Where they find out something about like the adult world or even the teenage world where they'll see their older siblings preparing for college applications or going to a summer job, or they'll see their parents doing taxes or paying bills or like stressing about whatever adult thing. And you will, as a child, you will kind of freak out a little bit. You'll have a little bit of an internal panic about the idea of like finding a job, buying a house. How do I know what to buy at the grocery store? Because you conceive of yourself as you're imagining it, taking on those tasks in the body of an adult, but with the mind that you have as like an
Yes.
8-year-old. Because it's impossible for an 8-year-old to conceive of having any other
Yeah.
mind. I think for most kids, politics and more granular aspects of history and economics, that falls into the same category because there's like a dryness and a seriousness with it. But when like you see people like joking about it and there's like a fluidity and
Yeah.
it's this thing that can be funny, there's obviously like you don't get really many or maybe any of the jokes if you're like 8, but it's still there's a similar rhythm to the conversation as like when you and your friends talk about like the Animaniacs or some shit.
Yeah.
And I really do think that went a long way towards towards making it a kind of a lifelong interest.
Mm. The last thing I want to ask you here, I think everybody is celebrating in this like incredible moment of Zohran's victory. What is the takeaway that we should learn going into 2028? What are the pitfalls that we should be aware of? What should we learn from this incredible moment and historic victory for the left?
I think there is a little bit of the Obama problem where you do have like a singularly capable lead, but in the same way that Obama did also have very well run campaigns, there is still some, I think, pretty valuable takeaways. Obviously, the one I keep hitting on is this idea that voters and especially uninitiated voters do want the chance to rise to the occasion and be spoken to like adults, and they aren't flattered by candidates dumbing themselves down right in front of them. Something something that I hope some of the people around Zoran remember is that for a lot of this Israel stuff, there is just nothing he can say or do that is ever going to satisfy some people.
Hmm.
I think for the most part, they're aware of that. But in the future, I hope whoever comes next, whoever that may be, wherever, whatever races, whatever, uh, whether it is like more municipal contests or some federal seats, I do hope that that is apparent to people watching this, that there's really nothing you can do to appease people who say you did 9/11 or like, say that you want to kill all the Jews. Um, I guess those are the only two things I really feel like confident in saying now. All the other stuff is like, we'll kind of have to see how it'll play out, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention Brandon Johnson in the light of this. I don't think that Zohran is going to be, it's going to be like that. But I do think this could be a very good test case to see how will the DSA function as like an organizational ally to an elected official that also represents some of the organizational backbone of their campaign. It'll be, I hope, a very good proof of concept for people on the electoral side of the DSA advancing an agenda at the behest of an executive.
Yeah. That's a great point. Saw a quote from Bannon the other day that he is taking the 5,000 volunteers in the DSA and Zohran's campaign very seriously and sees it as a kind of populist analog to Trump running these insurgent candidates. So it'll be very exciting and telling to see what can develop with that organizational structure. Felix Biederman, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'm just
Thank you
an
for having
immense
me.
fan of your work,
Thank you.
It's wonderful to finally have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you again so much. I've really been looking forward to this, and this was a dream come true.
Yeah. Thanks, Felix.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. To watch part 2 of this episode, you can support the show on Patreon.